Lord. Okay, hello, you. I am so excited that you are back listening to this episode because have I got someone who is so already her energy is so grounded, it's so earthy as like yogis tend to be. Um and she is just killing it. So Kosti and I were part of the same business cohort. She was ahead of mine before I came in, but like the girl is crushing it. So we are with Sarah White, known as the Coastal Yogi, who does retreats. She leads these really banging ass like yoga classes. She's doing free yoga classes on Instagram. Like she's just crushing. You are just crushing. So
Thank you.
welcome, dude.
I'm so excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
No, we are excited. Well, I don't know if they're excited yet, but I'm excited. So hopefully they can like feel the excitement.
Yeah.
Tell us about you. How did you even get into this? Like, walk us through this journey that you went on.
Yes. So I was a college athlete. It took me out to San Diego, and I had never done yoga before, didn't know much about it, and eventually decided to get out of college athletics. But the one thing that I really credit college athletics for was we had a yoga 1 hour requirement every single week. And at first, I used to dread it, and then it started to grow on me a little bit.
Yeah,
And so after leaving the team, I found Yoga Sculpt and I was like, hold on, this is it. Like
it's legit.
this is my jam.
Yeah.
I loved it, and that kind of just sparked this whole journey of how can I get more invested? How can I learn more and grow more from it? And did my training while I was in college to become an instructor, and that was back in 2016, and it's just grown and grown from that.
Yeah. So when you were first a baby yogi, kind of like baby Yoda, but baby Yoda is so cute. So when you were a baby yogi, like, so you got introduced to yoga sculpt. Can you explain what that is for people
Yeah.
that don't know?
So, Yoga Sculpt is a blend of yoga, strength training, and cardio. So, I like to call it both a workout and a work in. So, you have this mental component that you typically wouldn't get in a workout as heavily as you do in yoga.
What is the work in like?
I like to align each of my classes with some form of a mantra, and it usually invites you to think about some component of your life off of your mat, but we get to work on it on your mat. So,
Mm.
say, you're working through um, your gratitude practice of sorts. Like maybe it's about being really grateful for your body that day or what your body's able to accomplish for you. And hopefully, from that space of gratitude, that's able to trickle out into your life off of your mat as well.
I love that. So I find that a lot of people who get into yoga do so for a workout, really not realizing. And I think this is something that a lot of yoga instructors, some are very into the spiritual side of yoga and some really don't market it at all, but it is such a blend of both. So I love that you blend it. So can you talk to us a little bit about like yoga's roots and how it's typically like if gyms are marketing it, it's typically like come work out and do yoga, but it really has a spiritual component to it.
Hmm.
So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah. In the Yoga Sutras, which is like one of our most like foundational texts of yoga, there's this one sutra that translated means yoga is the cessation of the fluctuations of the mind. And what's
Mm.
really cool is that like it in that you don't hear anything about like, there has to be movement or there doesn't have to be movement or anything. And so I do find that there are so many ways that that can be interpreted, and really at its roots like yoga started as more of like a meditation type of practice and like breath awareness. And so it's cool that we get to move our bodies in something like a yoga sculpt or in something like a power yoga practice. But the most important component of that class ends up being the end of the class when we get to that shavasana state, because the goal is that you've been able to work and almost tire out your body so
Mm.
that now we can access the deeper parts of you and give you that connection point and allow you to come back to that connection space that lives within you.
I love what you just said. So I find through my work, both coaching and therapy, that so many people are just absolutely disconnected from their bodies. And I think if we take a macro view, it has a lot to do with like living in capitalism, where your body is what you sell to exist in this world. And if you're a woman, like the pressure to look a certain way and to be a certain weight or to, have a certain aesthetic. And then it's compounded if you're a person of color, if you're a person with a physical disability or any of those things. And it just creates this huge, huge disconnect in their body. So is that something that you're finding as well? Like a lot of people really don't have good body awareness and then they develop it through yoga.
Yeah, I think it does allow you to access, like, I find that your time on your mat is almost like getting to know yourself better, right? It's like your
Mm,
connection point, and the more you come to your mat, my hope is that, like, you don't need me to tell you what you need on your mat, you know? Like, my goal is that I'm hopefully helping you to listen to your intuition a little bit
mm-hmm.
more. And so maybe,
Yes.
I might be cueing a warrior too, but if you're noticing something funky in your knee, you're not
Mm-hmm.
just pushing through it because I told you to, right? You're
Right.
finding ways to make these shapes work in your body versus trying to have this like picture perfect,
Mm-hmm.
idealized shape that maybe you see on Instagram on
Yeah.
someone's posts. So that's truly
Yeah.
my goal with all of that is to help you like step into your perfect body the way it is.
Mm, which is so much more empowering than having to be perfect, which is another behavior that disconnects us from our body because it doesn't honor who we are and how we fit. Like there are people who can do a quote unquote like textbook yoga pose, and there are people that can't because of limitations, or they can work really, really hard at it and still never get there. So I love that empowering stance. How did you get into doing retreats? Like that's something that you do. What was that like?
Yeah, I'm really lucky to have my mentor. Her name's Katie B. She lives in San Diego. So she led my first yoga sculpt training when I was in college. And at the time, she had been running retreats probably for a couple years. And I was a senior in college, kind of was feeling lost in the whole job process. And I saw she was doing this like one night retreat, super low entry to or barrier to entry. It was like local, it was in Temecula or something. And I went by myself. I didn't know a single person there. I was
Awesome.
like the youngest by probably like 15 years. And
Love it.
I just like dove in, and it was the most eye-opening experience.
Mm,
And I, from there, was like, okay, how do I do more? And so kept being an attendant on an attendee on all of them. And then she invited me to start assisting and enrolling. And I've been able to kind of shadow different companies and different people in the retreat process, and really got to bring my own community and my own flair to all
love
of
it.
the retreats I've done.
Why are they so impactful? Because a lot of
Yeah.
people, one, I think, don't know what retreats are. So, can you explain what retreats are and how
Yeah.
are they different from just like a vacation?
Yeah. Retreats, I find, truly allow you to surrender to the process. We have this like saying that when you go on a retreat, you want to expect nothing and receive everything. So,
Yes.
meaning like we align the agenda for you so you can let go of the control of like having to plan all the things,
Mm.
and which is
I
hard
bet
for
that's
some
hard for some
days.
people.
Yes. And then we have like different activities, right? So every retreat's going to be different. Some are going to be more health wellness focused, some are going to be more like a balance of that and community creation. And so on ours, we typically have some type of movement component in the morning, some type of workshop component where we get to move through some type of personal exercise, but maybe then you're doing some group sharing and getting to hear different perspectives. And then there's usually, based on the location we're in, some type of fun local activity, a way for us to emerge into the culture. And that's pretty much it. Everything is like laid out for you, which I love so much.
Where is the favorite place like hands down your favorite place to do it? Where is it?
Oh my goodness, that's a hard one. I really do love when we do in Sardinia. So it's an island off of Italy, and I think it's my favorite location because of the hosts. It's
Mm,
actually one of my friend Katie's college friends' family has owned this villa for like decades, and it's gone through
wow.
generations. And it just has such a homey feel to it. It's like this little enchanted paradise that you can't even tell from the water how beautiful it is until you're like on the property.
Wow.
So I feel like it has these like really magical vibes to it in general. And then the work we get to do on top of that just makes it really special.
Mm, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
What are some of the transformations that you've seen people go through?
Yeah, on these trips, what I find makes it so impactful is that yes, you can go to a workshop in a town you live in, right? But you still have those residual worries of like, you're in the same spaces maybe where work is or where
Mhm.
you have family obligations. And when you take yourself completely out of that scenario, I find that you give yourself this new realm to open up into.
Mm.
And I- one of the favorite exercises that we do is sometimes we'll have people write out 10 defining moments in their life. It could be good, bad,
Ooh,
and do some like actual journaling on one of them and then sharing. And
interesting.
it's so interesting to find out like who people are on a deeper level than just
Mhm.
asking like what your job is.
Yeah.
And the way that someone might say something that's happened in their life that's significant and the person next to them had no clue and they shared the same exact experience or a similar experience.
Wow.
And so I find that it teaches people to be a little bit more human and to just meet themselves where they're at and take off this mask of,
Mhm.
who I am is my job and, my social status and all these things and come
Yeah.
back to the root of what connects us all. And that's what I love so much about them is it brings back that human element.
Oh my God, goals. I think it's such a fascinating thing. I talk to a lot of people in the wellness space, obviously wellness podcast.
Yes.
Um, and the thread that connects people who genuinely give a shit about other humans
Yes.
is the longing and the prioritization of authenticity. And you don't get that with like grifters. You don't get that with like cult leaders, right? Because they don't care who you are and they don't want to connect you. They want you connected to them, like not them connected to each other. And I think putting that in such a way that you just explained, like we forget what it is to be human and to just connect with each other. And it's something that like in my spare time, I will study sometimes like the role of capitalism in creating a nuclear family and how that disconnects us from each other, which then feeds capitalism, which
Yes.
makes people buy more and we're sad and we're depressed and you're easier to control and you're easier to buy stuff because you're looking for that, quick hit that you don't get from people. And when we take a mask off, when you're just like, hey, here's the ugly parts of me, and you might
Yeah.
turn away, but what if you don't?
Yes.
Is so fucking powerful. I love that.
Yeah.
And I think it would be like as the person who's leading that exercise, there, I imagine, are some surprises in what people find significant.
Yeah.
Because everyone can say like, well, like a wedding day or a divorce day or your kid being
Totally.
born or God forbid something happened to one of your parents or your children. Like,
Hmm.
there's some that we can pick out, but there's some that you're probably like, what?
Yeah.
Wild.
It's really interesting to see what comes out of it. And on it depends how long the retreat is, but sometimes we do that exercise like multiple days. And so it's
Yeah.
like, okay, you did day one, now pick a new
Mm,
story to write. And
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see like sometimes the first day people like they go there, right? Like they
Yeah.
go all
Yeah.
in. And some maybe like didn't go as all in and
Like
just
one
wanted to
toe.
kind of read the
You're like,
room. And
this
then
water's cold.
yeah, and then the next day, those are usually the people who then like go there. They're like, okay, I
Mhm.
feel supported. I feel safe in this space. Okay,
Yeah.
I'm gonna dive in. And it can happen like that's more of like a verbal one, right? Where you get to open up. There's other ones where we'll do eye staring that you're supposed to just like keep eye
Wow.
contact and this one person's basically just the wall and is asking who are you over and over again and the other person is coming up with responses and like
Wow.
even just like that component of just having to look at
Oh my
someone
God, that
in
would
the
be so
eye.
uncomfortable.
Yeah, it's so uncomfortable because we
I'm
just
I'm
don't do
uncomfortable. It's
that.
not even happening to me.
It's the
That's
funniest thing. Like
crazy.
you not the in the goal again. Like it's not to break you down necessarily. It's more to break down like those superficial layers, and then
Mhm.
how can we then build you back up from within you and from that
Yeah.
space. And before you go back out into the world after this retreat experience, like how do you integrate that back in?
Yeah.
And that's where the true power lies in these experiences.
Do you find that people will go on multiple retreats with you?
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Like
That
the
is so
return
cool.
rate is very strong. And, maybe it's like a timing thing where the next one isn't the one they go
Sure.
on. But from my Greece trip and from Croatia, I have people on both of my next two retreats from those
Yeah.
retreats going. And it's so cool. It's like a
Oh,
reunion and then like new
yeah.
people, and it's great.
And you get to see the growth too, which is really cool because as a yoga instructor, like yeah, you get into the heart of people, but it's so different from like the depth of what you can do with a retreat. So that
Totally.
must be really cool to see.
Yeah, there's one girl too who's coming from Greece. She's like one of my favorite examples. She didn't take a single like vacation day during the pandemic, and was like working like pretty much around the clock. And then this coming year, she posted her upcoming travel and retreat schedule, and it's like six different trips, like doing all these things for herself. And like that's the coolest transformation to see that, you realize there can be a balance and you can take this time for you, and it's not selfish to
Yeah.
really invest in yourself in those ways when you need it.
Well, you know what? It is selfish and that's okay.
Yeah,
Like
you're right. Yes.
people have such a freaking allergic reaction to the word selfish. And I'm just like, women,
Yeah.
women have such an allergic reaction
Yes.
to the word selfish. They're like, well, I don't want to be selfish. And I look at them and I'm just like, then die. Like burn yourself
Yeah.
out until you want to kill yourself. Because
Yeah.
I promise you that's where you're heading.
Yeah. It's
And
so
it's
true.
crazy. Like be selfish. Be
You
more
have to.
selfish, people.
Yeah. You got to
I
be your
love
own
that.
like biggest cheerleader, biggest
Right.
supporter, like all those things, because no one's going to do that for you. And
Right.
it's the same with work, right? Like
Mhm.
some people like, are so afraid to leave a job because of how like work will feel and blah blah blah.
Right.
And it's like, but if they needed to fire you, like pandemic, great example. So many
Right.
people had to be furloughed, fired, all these things. And
Mhm.
it's like, would you have put so much priority onto them had you known
Right.
what could
Right.
happen? And
I
that's
had
always,
a client tell me a few months ago, chronic people pleaser.
yep.
I was bad. And they said, I was always such a good person. I thought good things would just happen to me. And I was like, I bet someone sold you that lie so that
Mhm.
you didn't cause any trouble and you
Yeah.
were never selfish and you never
A
questioned
disruptor.
their bullshit. You weren't a disruptor, right?
Mhm.
So you're quiet and you were good and you were, and good is always synonymous with quiet when it comes to women. Oh, you're a good girl. You're quiet and you're pretty and you don't do anything. You
Yeah.
never challenge me. You never take a day off. You're never selfish. And that broke my heart. And I was like, nothing good is going to happen to you because what you're doing is digging yourself a grave
Yeah.
every single day with every decision that you make. And it is so heartbreaking.
Yeah.
And so retreats, yoga mat, doing, I mean, shoot, just even taking a yoga class for some people is a huge step.
Yeah.
Is a huge step.
It's even like just a little glimpse at kind of a retreat experience if you think about it. Like it's a mini transformation point of where you
Yeah.
get to like fully invest in you for that, half hour, hour, whatever it is that you're carving out the time for.
Mhm.
And even just having someone tell you to breathe in your day, it's like, whoa, like, oh yeah,
Oh,
that's crazy. I can focus on that and that's going to change my perspective. Even
yeah.
just 5 minutes of that changes your perspective. So
Yeah.
it's cool to see how we can kind of integrate all these things and how it can really allow us to shift the way that we interact in the world and start
Mhm.
taking some ownership of that.
Yes. I think that's the biggest, what I see when I work with people, um, is that once they start taking radical accountability, not that everything is their fault, like, we live in an ecosystem and the ecosystem affects us and we all have different privileges and barriers and things like that. So nothing is completely all on us.
Yeah.
Um, some things are completely all on us. Some things are not. Anyway, there's a balance.
Yeah.
But what I find is once people start taking radical accountability for the shit that actually is on them, one, a bunch of stuff clears away that they were wanting cleared away for a really long time. And two, stuff starts. I don't know why I cannot talk today. Um, stuff starts showing up for them that they have been wanting forever. And I don't know if that's something that you have experienced or it's something that you see people experience when they start doing this work.
Yeah, it's like the second you start shifting your focus to that and like becoming more accountable and like actually
Mhm.
letting stuff out, it's not necessarily about writing out like every single step that's gonna have to happen for you to get there, right? Like
Right.
you don't know, like things might happen in a way you never
Mhm.
expected, but it's about like bringing the focus into that space so that it can start to expand, and then also trusting in leaving space for the
Mm.
universe, whatever you want to call it, higher power
Yeah.
to drop in those little miracles along the way. And that's like kind of the big picture. Like I'll give you an example. I wrote
Yes.
down, I have this, little goal journal that it's 10 things. I write them out as if they've already happened, and I write them out like daily. And one of them was I lead a yoga sculpt tour, and I think I left it at that. I didn't even go that in detail. And then like a month later, I got contacted about teaching at Big Night Live, which is like a club venue.
So cool.
And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm like, is it a cross country tour? No, but is it like showing up in a huge performance venue in a way I've never done before
Right.
and like creating impact in that way? And I was like, how cool that like just by putting something out there, I'm seeing it kind of manifest in a different way.
And the
And
pictures, by the way, are so fucking cool. Oh my God. I saw you post the ones I think yesterday, and I was
yes.
like, I am so jealous. Like they are. This morning, I was like, I'm going to get a freaking group instructor certification so that I
Yes.
can have cool pictures like Sarah.
It's such
Literally
a
so
cool
cool.
venue. Oh, I
That is
love it.
awesome. What's another one that you've seen manifest in that way?
I mean, I've always written out like my partner and I, we wanted to be homeowners, and I mean, everybody probably understands to some degree like how stressful that can be with
Stressful.
saving, and
Yeah.
especially during a pandemic, that felt like the craziest, silliest idea ever to be writing that out.
Right.
And but then we made it happen, and
Love
we
it.
are homeowners, and it did take like a lot of like putting all the pieces together, but I left my full-time job right literally 2 months before the pandemic started, which was, yeah,
Love
fun.
it.
But then it opened up this like crazy window
Right.
for
Right.
virtual things, for
Mhm.
me to actually stay afloat during it, and
Yeah.
it also like thrive during it. And
Yeah.
now I was able to buy a home, and I'm like,
That's
I could have
wild.
never predicted that. I didn't think that it was even in the realm of possibility.
Yeah.
But by like, you know, getting out there, looking at houses, doing things like it was all these little things that were able to come together that seemed on paper to be impossible.
Yeah. I think there's a lot to be said for one, law of attraction,
Hmm.
and for manifesting. But I think what a lot of people get wrong about manifesting is they just say the words, I'm a
Mm.
homeowner, and they don't look at houses. They
Yeah.
don't save money. They don't
Yes.
prioritize doing those things. And they're like, it's not working. And it's like, listen, friend, you have to do the steps. Like,
Yeah. The steps got to be
and
there.
I think people get that wrong. And not that you have to know everything, right? You didn't know exactly what neighborhood you would want to be in, or maybe you didn't know exactly the square footage, but
Yeah.
doing the things that you know how to do to get there
Hmm.
works, because the
Yeah.
next step is always going to be revealed to you. And it's, I live in the Bible Belt, and
Mm.
it's an interesting thing that I see. So lots of Christians here, lots of like Southern Baptists, lots of very, very religious people.
Yeah.
Um, and it's an interesting trend that I see with people who are quite religious, in that they'll question every single one of their decisions as if the only faith they practice is when they go to church on Sundays. And I talk sometimes in other podcast interviews about how trusting in yourself and your intuition and building the life that you want is such a leap of faith. And it's the exact same thing. Like, these things are put on your heart for a reason, because you may not know how to get there yet. You may not have the money yet. You may not have the skills yet, but they're on your heart for a reason. And so it is astounding to me that people will sit on their dreams. I don't know if this is something that you've seen, or if it's maybe because you're in the transformation space, you see the opposite,
Yeah.
where people have been sitting on their dreams for so long, and they take one step forward and suddenly they're like, oh shit, now we're running. Now
Yeah.
we're running towards this, but they have sat in that space for sometimes a lifetime.
Yeah. And I think we see this a lot, like even in our business mentorship that we both did, like that container, like you see that a lot, right? A lot of people coming to the table with, yeah, I've always like wanted to do this. I haven't quite,
For
known
years.
how, but like even just signing up and like taking a step in that direction,
Mhm.
like you never know where that'll land you. And I mean, that's how I started. I started off with zero products and zero,
Yeah.
like just teaching my classes and showing up. And then now I think I have like six products out and different
Oh
offerings.
my
And
God. Love
it's
it.
like stuff that I just never could have seen happening. But because you were willing to bet on yourself even a little bit and take the
Yeah.
risk and try something. And so what if we're so afraid to fail, right? That's the biggest thing. It's like failure
Right.
is just like, I
Right.
have to be perfectly ready to do these
Right.
things. It's like,
That's a
it's
lie.
never going to be the right time. It's never going to be the
Right.
right anything. It's like you have to be willing to put a little bit of skin in the game to make it happen.
Mhm. And I think, so I run into that a lot with people and they're
Mm.
like, well, what if I fail? And I say, okay, so what? So I do this process like called so what with them. And they go, well, I'm going to fail. What if oh, who was the one I was talking to the other day? They were like, well, what if I get into a relationship and I love them? Not even if it doesn't work out. What if I
Yeah.
love them? And I say, okay, so what? And they say, well, then we're together and we're happy. And I say, okay, then what? And they say, well, what if we break up after that? And I was like, okay, then okay. Then you break up after that. It's
Yeah.
fine. Like it's okay. Or people will say, what if I get into what if I meet someone and they're great? What if I start a new job and I hate it? And I
Mm.
say, okay, so what? And they say, well, then I'll hate my job. And I say, okay, so what? Then what are we gonna do? And they're like, I'll just get another job. And I'm like,
Yep.
that's a great plan. Do that. Or I talk a lot about David, my partner who started a business. And when he was, I say all the time, he's from like a normal family. We're like, his parents were very like safety minded. And so they were like, well, their first thought was an anxious thought. What if it doesn't work out? What if it, so that was his rhetoric forever. And his parents are absolutely lovely people. But a lot of
Mm.
normal people think like that. Whereas I grew up with a dad who's like absolutely fearless. And he's like, well, fuck it. Let's try it. Let me
Yeah.
see what I can get away with, which is really how my dad operated. So watching someone go through like, what if it doesn't work out? And I said, okay, well, what if you fail? He said, well, I'm gonna have to get a job. And I'm like, so you'll be in the exact same spot
Yep.
that you're in now
Yeah.
with a whole lot more
Exactly.
experience and knowledge and guts.
Yes, that
Like,
literally, like, that was my leaving my
yeah,
full-time job experience was
right.
like talking to all of my bosses at the time. They were like, you're doing really well here, but it's also super clear that like that is something you're super passionate about, you're really good at.
Oh,
And
how
like
supportive. I love that.
it was so supportive.
That's
And
awesome.
they also were like, okay, and so if it doesn't work out, like you've been an amazing employee, like just apply again,
I'll just
like
hire you
it,
back.
yeah, it's like
Right.
you can get a job again. And it's like, oh yeah, so then what am I worried about? And like, why am I so like hesitant? It's like
Yeah. You just
everything's
make it up.
laid out. You just gotta do it.
Yeah. And we don't ever want to like, there's obviously a difference between like feeding the fear and then just problem solving it. Like, so what? So he like bought the property that he has the business for. And I said,
Yeah.
worst case scenario, you sell it
Yeah.
or you keep it, whatever. You can afford it. If you get a job, you can still afford it because it was cheap.
Yeah.
And I'm just like all the time. And our brains, when you own a business, when you're doing anything new, when you're chasing the life that you want, when you're planning for something, your brain, your little gremlin brain is always going to come up with all this bullshit excuses. Well,
Mhm.
what if everyone hates you? And what if there's a troll comment on Instagram? And what if your friends make fun of you? And what if your left toe is a little bit longer than your right toe and then you can't do it? And it's like, if people, and this is something I teach all the time, but if people would just look at it and be like, okay, so what if that happens?
Yeah.
Then they can be like, oh, well, I'll just do XYZ. And it's like, great.
Yeah.
Go live
Move
your life.
past it. One of the things that I always like talk about a lot in class too is that our there's our thoughts and then there's the thinker of our thoughts, right? And so our
Mm,
thoughts are
talk
not
nerdy to me.
yeah, it's like thoughts are not reality, right? It's this like
They can be.
constant track and you get to think about like
Mhm.
you get to choose which ones you want to give value to and which ones you're just going to say thanks for being here, all set with you. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
you. And so
Yeah.
when you come back to reality of like, okay, like why am I even saying that? Like that's not even true. Then
Right.
it's like, cool, you're taking back your power in the situation. And I have to remind myself of that all the time because anxiety loves to take over our thoughts and do all
Right.
these things. And it's just a cool reminder sometimes to be like, oh yeah, cool. Like my
Yeah.
thoughts don't actually matter that much if I don't want them to.
Yeah. I say all the time they're like backseat driver thoughts. I don't know if you've seen
Yes,
that
yes.
meme with someone driving and like Jesus is in the back and he's like,
Yeah.
swim under that tree. And they're like, not
Yep.
now, Jesus.
Yep.
And I think about that all the time. And I tell people, like, I'm 31 now, since I was 16 and I started driving, every single time I drive over a bridge, and I grew up in Florida,
Yeah.
lots of bridges. Every
Yeah.
single time I drive over a bridge, my brain, my little gremlin brain goes, drive off the bridge. Not a joke.
Oh my
Since I
God.
hit 16 years old. And I was like, nah, like,
Well
well,
said.
I'm not going to do that. But I have gotten out of a submerged car in my head since I was 16. And every time I'm behind a semi, my brain goes, I wonder what would happen if we rammed into that semi as fast as possible. And then, like, logically, I'm just like, well, I would be decapitated, obviously.
Yeah, it wouldn't
But I
end
have
well.
things to do, so I can't be decapitated.
Yeah.
So understanding that, like, because a lot of people get really caught up in that. And I tell people, like, if I believed those thoughts as gospel, if I thought there was something wrong with me, if I thought that I couldn't separate myself from them, I would never get behind the wheel of a car. And then my
Yeah.
life would be so limited because, transit in the US sucks.
Yeah.
So, but if you just treat them and you're like, all right, yeah, cool. Like, I could do that, but I'm not going to do that. Like, I could punch this person in the face or hit them with my car when I'm mad, but I'm not going to do that. I may
Yeah.
cuss them out, but
Yeah.
I'm not going to hit them with my car. So you're right. Being the person behind your thoughts. So you can choose which ones to feed. And I can tell you, and you may see this, like, the people who feed the fear they think they live a safe, protected life, but they live in prison. Like,
Yeah.
you create a prison and it's so miserable. And then they think that they're a failure because they don't have the life that they want, not realizing that, like, they've created this prison every single day with every single thought that they feed that is not even helping them. And they think it's helping them. And it's so
Yeah.
sad.
Yeah. And it ties into too, like meditation. And a lot of people think like, oh, I have thoughts, and so I can't meditate. And it's like, no, like
We
you're
want you to
you're
have
in the
thoughts.
right spot. Like, welcome to the party. It's about like, okay, maybe instead of having 500 thoughts at a time, we're narrowing that down a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
and shifting your focus to something else, whether it be a
Yeah.
mantra, whether it be your breath. So it all kind of ties in, but all is a reminder to you that like at the root of it, you're good. You're all set.
Yeah.
Like you you're right where you need to be no
Mm-hmm.
matter the situation. If you're having those messed up thoughts, if you're having a lot of thoughts, like that's all okay. It's just remembering how we get to
Yeah.
work past that and how that process helps us.
I love that. And yoga ties so well into it too, because parts of yoga are like very uncomfortable and
Totally.
you have to sit in poses that are uncomfortable. And then the guidance is like, breathe through it. And everyone's like, what do you mean?
What does that mean? Yes.
But it's such a good practice to sit in discomfort and not run away from it or try and fix it. Like, it'll go away on its own. And I don't know about you, but like for me, like, I hate cardio. It's not my jam.
Hmm.
But there's a certain point where, like, it doesn't get any worse.
Yeah. It becomes a little bit more consistent in that
Yeah,
I
it
think like
sucks,
half
but it
marathon.
doesn't suck worse.
Yeah, like a half marathon, like I feel like the first few miles you're like, okay, this is hard. And then you get to a point where you're kind of like, well, my legs are kind of just moving and nothing's
Yeah.
like more painful. It's
Yeah.
just maintenance at
I've
that
capped
point.
out.
Yeah, that's
I've
like
capped
kind of
out of
it.
my
But
pain.
then you think about though, like what you just said about being in a pose and like having to focus on your breath and stuff.
Mhm.
It teaches you to move through discomfort and handle
Mhm.
discomfort when you're
Yeah.
off your mat then, right? And like that's the overall goal with yoga in my mind is like, cool, I'm glad that it can be helpful while you're on your mat, but now like, okay, how do we take these lessons back into your day? And
Right.
it's the same with meditation, right? You're hopefully getting these glimpses at infinite possibility, creativity, all these things, and like these little glimpses of that start to
Yeah.
come out of your meditation with
Yeah.
you.
Like, go embody that. That's how we
Yes.
really create change, is like, we can think about change and it's one part of the practice, and we can take an action in change, and that's another part of the practice. But until we like embody that change, until we do it automatically, like, if people think about driving, I mean, most of us, if we've been driving long enough, don't even have to think about driving
Yes.
because we embody being a driver now. So if you embody being someone who can sit with discomfort, if you embody someone who is positive, who practices compassion, who practices gratitude, and that's just who you are now, we're so much more malleable than I think we give ourselves credit for. And yoga is such a great medium for that too, because one, if you have a good instructor, like, they're coaching you in a safe environment where like, if you fall out of your pose, you just get right back in and that's okay. And so you can practice these things in like a low pressure environment, or if you're on a retreat, like ideally everyone there is supportive. Like, I don't know why you would go on a retreat just to be a troll. That's not very helpful. But so you get to practice it in like a safe container to build these, a little bit of like, not efficiency, mastery, maybe a little bit of like skills with the skills. And then you get to go apply it at home. And if you screw up, it's like, okay, well, but you already have this little baby foundation that you're working from.
Yeah.
This is so lovely. Do you partner with other people on your retreats, or how do you typically run them?
Yeah, so I work with a couple different companies, one being my friend Katie's company, and then another company she introduced me to. And then actually the studio I teach at, Bespoke, that Mooch also teaches at, they work with a third company that also helps us lead experiences. So I like partnering with different people because you got different experiences, right? Some are going to be more focused on like fitness, adventure. Some are more focused on like the actual like yoga, meditation type of work. So it really just depends which one. And that's the cool part, is you get something different. No two retreats are exactly the same. It depends on the people. It depends on the place we go.
That is so lovely. Oh, it is just so cool. And when you partner, like you don't have to do the whole retreat by yourself, right? So you are like planning, promoting, but you're not like planning for them to go up every time, which I'm sure is such a relief.
Totally. And there's like a lot of times the reason I like partnering is because then there's usually some type of other role that is more responsible for logistics in terms of like, okay, like the actual like sourcing of where we're going and like picking out the other, instructors that are going to be a part of it. And then I get to focus more on like, what is like the agenda part? What am I going to lead in a workshop? And then just connecting with my community about promoting it and getting, the people there, which is fun.
I just want to do what you do. Secretly, I interview people who I'm like, oh my God, their goals, and I want them to tell me how they do it. Really, it's selfish for me.
No, it's good. It's
good. I love it. So you are located where?
So I'm located normally in the Boston area, and right now I'm in Florida for the holidays. So yeah, so here for a week, but yeah, normally Boston, and then just wherever else I'm traveling in that year.
That is so cool. Where are you going next year?
Next year I have Nicaragua, early January. What else? Portugal in May.
Oh my God.
South Africa in December. So yeah.
Dude, your life is so cool. Your life is so cool. And there's people that like do it. I was talking to a client Saturday and they were like, I just want to get paid to travel. And I was like, there's a ton of people who get paid for that. And they were like, what? I was like, bro, people do this like for a living.
Yeah.
And it's wild. And they really had no idea that like people get paid to travel for a living. So I think the other beautiful thing about relationships, to circle back around, is that when you interact with people who give you a different perspective, who have different experiences and you have different knowledge than you expand your horizons. Because had no one ever told them like, hey, literally people do that for a living, like travel influencers exist, all of those things, they may have justified the belief that says, well, it's not possible for me. And it's like, well, when other people do it,
it's all these little steps, right? Like along the way too. And it comes back to like, for example, before you can just go and like host a retreat and just expect people to show up, you have to have that community established, right? And so it's like, okay, well, how do I do that? And it's like, well, maybe it is that you become a group fitness instructor. Maybe it is that you create some type of container that you're working within. And so I think like a lot of people will say that, right? Oh, like so cool to get to travel and do that. And then when they see like, oh, wow, like this takes some work to like put together. It's like, it's so rewarding. And it's also like, you got to put the steps in and things.
Yeah. Ooh, I love this. What else? What else do you want to jam on? We got some time.
What else? I think like another cool component that ties into that is like, how do you make it so that you can be mobile and be able to travel and still have clients and still have like income coming in and all of that. And that was something that like, I don't know about you, but the pandemic like really made a reality in terms of you
Yeah.
can work from home, you can work
Yeah.
from wherever you're traveling and make things happen, which is
Yeah.
cool.
The nice thing about mine is like I work from home anyway. So
Oh,
I see
cool.
clients on the farm. So like for me,
Awesome.
literally nothing changed.
You're like,
Um,
this is already the
yeah, I
thing.
just already walked out my back door and I was like, sup, we're partying.
Yep.
Which is what I call therapy sessions. I call them a party. I don't know if my clients agree, but I'm like, we're partying and you may be
Yeah.
crying and it's a good party.
Great.
Um, so I was already at home full time. So for me, it's actually the transition to traveling while doing it, but it's
Mm,
also just on me because I don't love doing video and
yeah,
because I have the farm.
true.
So while there's, and this is how we say, like, when we're teaching someone, hey, like, what's possible for you within your ecosystem? Like, could I
Yeah.
travel for 3 months out of the year? Yeah, probably, but it's not really doable for me because I have 50 animals to take care of. Like, my
Yes.
parents are here, but that's not fair. And I'm not
Yeah.
willing to do that. So, like, how can we, within our realm, within what's realistic for us now, not that it may change later, how
Yeah.
can we do that now? Like, if you don't have a remote job and you're not able to get a remote job, can you negotiate more time off?
Yeah.
Can you negotiate higher pay so that you have more money to travel? Can
Yeah.
you negotiate working from home 1 day a week? I mean, even if you're a customer service focused job, like you can probably, unless you're like a nurse, right? But nurses have admin days. Can you take an admin day? If you're a teacher, like maybe that one's not good. But so people have
You're wrong.
levers that they can pull if we get into problem solving mode. And I think the beautiful thing about being connected with yourself and about having a practice where you watch your thoughts, you can start picking out ones that are juicy. So if you have a recurring thought, if you're not even thinking about your thoughts, you don't even know that it's recurring. So then we can say, okay, like, God, why does this one keep coming up? Like, why am I following all these people who travel? Like, why am I so jealous of all these people who get to do this? Or why do I really have this reaction to this type of thing? And then we can say, because you want to travel, because you don't want to travel, because you want to be married, because you don't want to be married, like whatever. And we have so many levers that we can pull. And I think like creating that space and stillness that you're doing for people allows those things to even come up. Because people don't know what they want if they have no connection, if they don't ever sit down and just fucking sit.
Yeah.
Like they don't just sit.
And we're so conditioned to that, right? Like we're constantly like moving, going, doing,
Yeah.
next thing. And then you all of a sudden get asked to like pause for a second. You're like, oh, whoa, like what's this
Right.
like? And what are these thoughts coming in? And why am I so tired? Or why am
Yeah.
I crying? And like all
Why am
these
I
things,
crying?
it's like your body has been trying to send you these signals and you just like aren't paying attention. So
Yeah.
it truly does. Like it creates that space for maybe thoughts you've like never had. Like 2/3 of our thoughts every day are the same thing. Right. And it's like, there's this 1/3 that we kind of have this power to like shift if we put ourselves in the right scenarios, if we break through our patterns of what we just do routinely and open up space for, oh, maybe a little bit more creativity or a little more of something new, something different.
Yeah. Because our brains love us on autopilot. Like our brain wants nothing more than to be on autopilot 24/7 because it takes less energy, which is why growth is so hard. And it's why your little gremlin brain is like, but what if we were afraid of everything and so we did nothing? And it's like, bitch, take a seat, homie. Like what we are busy. We busy living the life that we want. Thank you very much. But it does take work and it does take courage. And I think it really does take a good coach. Like if you want something and you find someone who's done it, and then you're like, hey, boo, how'd you do it? Like your path is easier, which is super nice.
And I don't even know if you know this, but I have a instructor mentorship program where,
awesome.
So basically I take in instructors that they could be just got their certification and haven't even started teaching to like have been teaching for 5 years and just like want to find the next groove for them. And it's cool because the content's there, but I always say like, this is just like, you can stop in at each of these destinations for as long as you want and move on. It might not even be relevant for you right now, but your journey is different than mine. And if I was just teaching you to do every single thing I did, it wouldn't work for you because like you said, like your ecosystem is different, but what are these different components where we can make things like easier for you and help you get there faster and like give you the tools and connections you need. And that's like the most like rewarding program I feel that I have, like that and teacher trainings and the retreats where you get to actually work one-on-one with people in their realm and learn more about what they need.
Because it's so different from like really digging in. I call it like digging into someone's brain versus like what people get from an hour. Like just the time difference. Spending days with someone is so different than like an hour. Even if they come every week, like it's different. It's like a width versus oh my Lanta, I cannot talk today. Like a width versus a depth. I just, you know what? I need to take a nap. That's what I need to do. Obviously,
that midday time.
Do not have time, but your girl needs a nap apparently.
Yes.
I just
it is so important. Yeah, the depth component, because you might see, like you said, like you might see a familiar face, like they take your Tuesday class every week, but I might not know the first thing about them. I might not know like they even like grew up here, if they're from Sutras, like what their job, like nothing. And it's cool then to afterwards see those people come back to your class, and now you have like these talking points of like, oh, how's this going? And you like see this person did it, like just getting those talking points. It brings it all back to that human element and making it more than just another number in your class, and actually putting that experience.
I have a really off-topic question, but it's something I want. As a yoga instructor, do you recognize people by like a certain body part?
Sometimes I feel like in the pandemic, yes, because people had masks on. And so half the time I'm like, I can't even recognize someone's face, but then I look at something, and like, I do this at Big Night Live all the time, because I don't get a class list till like sometimes the day of, and I don't get to really look at it. So then I'll be in the crowd and I'll just look back and I'm like, that looks like blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, is that you? And then like, I put that connection together. Funny. But I mean, it's staring at people's like femur bones and the connection to their knees and like all that, like you start to recognize like sometimes the way people's bodies like in a pose and a shape. So
it's so funny. I was a synchronized swimmer growing up forever, and I would recognize people by their legs, and it always creeped people out. I had a college professor who she did like triathlons, like Ironman triathlons in like her 50s. And I was like, girl, you are a badass. What is happening? And she would swim. She would like train at the pool that I would train at. And so we were like in the lanes next to each other. And I was like, Professor so-and-so. And she said, what? And I was like, I said, I'm so sorry to be creepy, but I recognized your legs. Like, I'm so sorry. I'm a creep, but here we are.
That's so funny.
I figured it was something like yoga and personal trainers, I'm sure, do the same thing.
Form. I mean, you're literally
I'm sure do it.
Studying the body. And that's like in personal training, like I like almost never am looking at somebody's face. I'm always just looking at like what's supposed to be happening where, like how is the alignment here? Like you're using like a different set of visual for any type of like verbal cueing towards like the body. And you've had to get so good at it, especially during the pandemic, because we couldn't use touch as much for adjustments and assists. And even then, like beforehand too, like not everybody wants that. So you have to be really clear about like, where should your body be in space, and how can you make a cue click for someone? Because everybody resonates differently with like the language you use too.
So it's kind of just like a giant puzzle piece, but with 30 people at a time.
Yes. It's wild. So weird when you get someone in one-on-one and you like fix something for them and they're like, wow, I can't believe I've been doing that wrong like for so long, or like this has felt uncomfortable for so long. And like it really is the space for you to get to like help somebody make everything click a little bit more, that sometimes you can't. It's just sometimes impossible to get when there's a 30-50 person room. You got to teach to the midline of the room and just hope that pulls everybody towards that midline in some way.
This is how do people find you if they're like, holy cheese whiz, Sarah is dope? How do they find you?
So my Instagram accounts, the Coastal Yogi is kind of like my main center for everything. And then the Coastal Method is where I post a little bit more about my programs, and, whether it's for actual like yoga students or instructors who are looking to dive deeper into mentorships, that's there. And then it's the coastalyogi.com is my kind of hub. And the Coastal Method .uscreen.io, really confusing URL, is where my monthly memberships are for any fitness related classes.
Oh, I love it. I just love it. So if people have just totally blanked on everything we just said for like basically the last hour, what do you want them to remember as they walk away? Or sit away. I don't know, whatever people do when they're listening to podcasts as they turn it off.
Yes. I think to bring it back to the human connection element, right? And giving yourself space to dive back into that piece of you, whether it be a yoga class, whether it be a retreat, whether it be a mentorship, like how can you get really clear on who you are, what you want, and what your purpose is in this world? And can you get quiet and sit with yourself to find that out?
I tell people often the cure for the pain is in the pain. So if people like can't sit still, I'm like, guess what you need to do more?
Yep. It's always what you don't want more of, right?
Have a panic attack. Sorry, love you. Love you about it. Oh, I love this. Okay. Dude, thank you so much. Like, this was beautiful.
Thank you. I'm so happy that we got to connect.
Yes. Yes, we love you. Okay, podcast fam, go get quiet and connect with yourself. We love it.
Yay.